أقول لك
نعمل تست.
بنيتها
الرجل كذا. استنى شوي. هات هاي اللينك. كيف تتعرف اللينك يا أنس؟
أنا بعطيه لعبادة هسه.
أنا بعطيه العبادة ابعث لي إياه. شغال أنت كويس بس أنس؟ موبايل بس شغال؟
وديته لصهيب وبلال وعبادة وحذيفة. كثير. طب تعال لحظة شوية يكسر لك إياها. سلميني صوري لنا جيب لنا
نجيب المكان المناسب. وقع لورا أحسن. لا هم فاضي وأنا فاضي. خذ
ما بيصلون
ما عبادة.
صهيب وبلال وعبادة.
وهو نحط معكم
تبعي
اي عشان نحط جهاز الدكتور انه هذا يحكي الدكتور يوصل على عمل تست ايش؟ ممتازة هاي. مين يدخل بحساب الجيمة؟
هو بده يدخل على حساب الدكتور.
الو وين؟ ماشي ماشي ان شاء الله. اوكي ان شاء الله. وشو اسمه وين هي كلش واجد بس اوكي. هو شو اسمه ادري اسمه شيء ذكرت ماشي. يلا سلام. إذا فيش تقسيم بعدين لا. عارف إن بعتني على الرقم الميل
وين؟
على الميل بعتها لك. تشتغل عندك شيء مش عارف
ايه؟
حمني يا أخي.
مم. مم.
أنا 5 Good morning.
Good morning, doctor. Hello?
Hello? Yeah.
Wait, Anass will come just a minute.
Can take some.
Okay. Doctor,
Yeah.
there is a delay about 15 minutes.
We start in 10 minutes.
After 15 minutes.
Okay.
Okay. So we can disconnect and call again?
I will wait.
Okay.
Bonjour Waris,
Bonjour Marianne.
tu vas bien?
Comment ça va?
Très bien.
Hello. Ça fait longtemps.
Je viens d'arriver. On attend. Ouais, ça va bien. On attend le jury.
Ah, ok.
Il y a un peu de
Alors,
retard.
sur les vacances?
Le 25 juillet.
Ok.
Et toi?
Le 25 juillet.
Ouais, c'est tard. Ouais.
Ah, c'est super tard.
Ouais, en fait, on va faire les derniers jurys vers le 20 juillet, les jurys de formation. Et chez toi, ça va bien?
Ah, ça va.
Ouais.
J'attends les vacances, moi je pars le 16.
Ah ouais, c'est bientôt. Tu pars, tu viens en France?
Je vais prendre 4 semaines pour une fois parce que c'était une année très étreintante.
Ouais. C'est
Je
ta,
vais prendre 4 semaines et après ça recommence encore.
ouais. C'est ta nouvelle charge qui dure, c'est ça?
Oui, c'est ça, c'est beaucoup de travail. Puis je ne sais pas si vous avez entendu parler, mais il y a eu beaucoup de coupures. Et il y a beaucoup de coupes budgétaires. Et donc, les choses qui nous prenaient avant une journée à faire, ça prend maintenant plusieurs semaines, beaucoup d'énergie et tout. Donc, du coup, c'est... Mais bon, c'est pas mal.
Ok. Moi, j'ai eu des nouvelles de Agère, donc elle est en Irlande, là.
Oui.
Puis ça va bien. Bon, on avait des papiers à finir, mais je ne sais pas si elle réussira à s'y remettre, on verra. Donc,
c'est ce que j'ai eu l'impression.
Ouais. Donc on va voir. Peut-être on remettra un étudiant dessus. On verra. Enfin, je veux pas l'écarter, donc ça serait avec elle. Mais voilà. Mais je voulais.
C'est pas une mauvaise idée parce qu'il y a quand même des choses à faire.
Ouais, il y avait des trucs à finir, quoi. C'est ça.
Excellent. Tu m'excuses.
Ouais, je t'en prie. Oui, je te laisse.
Ça va. Yannis n'a pas le choix que de marcher n'a pas le choix que de marcher. Attends, non, elle est déjà partie.
Wait.
I'm not supposed to be on the same laptop as the one you are using for your presentation.
You don't want that.
Okay, so I am on your laptop and the presentation is on the laptop of Jamal?
No, in the same laptop.
Oh, okay.
I think it's not a problem.
It's not a problem? Okay.
For me, I don't. Let's see.
Can you just change it? I see only the top of the screen. I don't see all the screen.
Yeah. Just.
Okay.
I think it's okay.
Yeah, I guess it's enough to see the. The only thing I need is to see the when you change the slide because I cannot read from here.
Yeah.
Yeah, the only thing I need is to see when you change the slide, which is okay now.
Perfect. And the sound is clear. No noise. Everything is okay.
I will increase the sound here.
Okay.
Should be okay.
Huh?
Why didn't you move this and that one only for
It's okay. It's work like this.
Yeah, I also I will probably switch off sometimes the camera in case I see that I'm participating from home.
Okay.
So sometimes if I see that the bandwidth is not enough, I will switch off the camera, but I will be here anyway.
Okay. No.
In case I am disconnected or if there is a problem, I will just send an email to Jamal.
Okay.
But it should be okay.
Okay.
هذا مشكلة أحيانا بس في هذا هذا الشاشة الحين في كلمة ولا شيء هذا مثل
sert à quelque chose. J'ai utilisé l'ordinateur.
Non.
C'était juste
Eh
pour
ben.
savoir si je faisais une bêtise, si j'ai touché. C'est bon.
Pour des coups, c'est infernal. C'est la cata. Quoi? C'est là que le mec pour l'hôtel, mais ouais, voilà. C'est pas si. Un mec qui de mettre des codes pour aller à l'hôtel, pas sûr de dormir. Ok, pour moi. Quoi? Ah oui, il n'a pas de non, je crois qu'il n'a pas de terme. Moi, c'est genre de truc, j'ai 3 semaines avant, c'est bon de faire ça à lui. J'ai pas regardé. Moi, tu sais, moi, je sais pas ta place. Si, moi, j'interviens. Oui, je sais pas. En fait, préparatoire ce matin. Ah oui, le truc, c'est jeudi matin. Demain matin? Demain matin, c'est un truc qu'il appelle atelier préparatoire. Voilà. Donc ça c'est l'initiation. Demain. Et après, le plénier de toute modélisation, c'est jeudi matin. Ah, c'est jeudi matin? Il y a tous les trucs. C'est là où il y a l'UML, le profil, si c'est moi, s'il y a. Là, c'est quand on. Moi, s'il y a la place, si j'ai pas, si j'ai pas parce que. Il m'a appelé, il m'a dit, il n'y a pas grand monde. Ouais, c'est ce qu'il a dit là, non, mais parce que les trucs, les gens, il faut le dire, c'est pas un sujet. Comme il n'y a pas beaucoup d'industrie, il faut aussi. Juste après? Non, parce que moi, je suis en fait, on a des copains, j'étais chez eux hier soir, je suis tu repars parce que si tu veux, sinon, j'étais à la rue, c'était un peu bien en fin de matin, je suis en fait pas surprise. Puis il y a ma fille qui est on fait un peu laser. Je le fais un peu chez nous. Oui, il a cherché. En fait, il est parti. On a sinon pas cherché. Ça va bien? Je veux bien. C'est la Dream Team. Ça va. Il y a Victor Victor, c'est ça. Oui, il est allé chercher le papier.
Il est allé chercher le papier.
Oui. Ah oui, il est là. Le désert, il est là. En plus, ça fait la responsabilité. Si ça se fait rarement, franchement, c'est bien. Non, non, il n'y a aucune erreur. Non, ça peut pas des rapporteurs. Moi, oui, bon, je suis pas sûr. Les rapporteurs, c'est pas les rapporteurs, c'est vraiment ça fait cher. On le réalisait ici. Donc moi j'ai pas obéi le jury je peux prendre en main ah oui, j'ai pas le il faut pas s'occuper des choses. J'ai fait un jury absolument la qualité totale qui avait Daniel Serrano, Sophia, qui avait fait un à la gare, son pain avec et puis, il y en avait un deuxième, c'était Pierre Van Roy, qui était vécu, et c'est ça que j'ai dit. Et en fait, le truc, c'est que les deux rapporteurs pouvaient. Et donc, c'est à distance avec une vidéo complètement infâme. Et donc, pour que ça fonctionne, il y a un DVD sur place qui n'est pas il a joué le président. Oh, c'est des conditions, ouais. Donc, au Wari, et la visite, elle a été mais ça, c'est quelqu'un qui a. Oui, mais c'est ça. Nicolas, il est avec lui. Ah, il est en Skype, je ne sais pas s'il y a un des 200 ans.
Is everybody here or you're waiting for someone?
In fact, it was a problem with the papers. We have it, and Jamal don't know that. He went to bring it, and he come back, and we will start, I think, in 1 minute.
Okay, excellent.
Okay.
Oui, c'est bon. Donc, ils arrivent. C'est ça qui les arrive. Je sais pas si qui est posé des questions. Comme tu veux. C'est installé. Qu'est-ce qu'on est fait Noël?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
In his way.
Ah bah non.
No, I don't know.
C'est ça. Il est en anglais, mais tu peux entraîner en français, mais lui, c'est en anglais. Donc, comme tu veux. C'est pas tout seul. C'est ça.
Bonjour. Aujourd'hui, M. Anass Shatnawi va présenter sa thèse de doctorat intitulée Support à la réutilisation par l'ingénierie de perspectives et des composants logiciels à partir du code structure intermédiaire de l'alliance des produits logiciels d'API. le docteur en informatique de l'université de Montpellier, c'est un doctorat de IES, information sécurité des systèmes. Devant le jury composé du lycée Wahid Sahraoui, professeur de l'Université de Montréal, qui participera dans pas de conférence, qui est le directeur de la thèse. Monsieur Jamel Serraï, on a des conférences dans l'Université de Montpellier, pas directeur de thèse. Monsieur Franck Barbier, lycée de Pau, rapporteur. Monsieur Jean-Michel Bourrel, professeur du lycée de Toulouse, également rapporteur. Monsieur Abdel Kader Gouache, maître de conférence, également de l'Université de Montpellier, promotionnel Serraï, donc examinateur. Et moi-même, par le professeur de l'université à l'Université de Bretagne Sud, de ma recherche à Médecin. Monsieur Shatnawi, vous avez Mr. Shatnawi, you have 45 years to defend and present your thesis.
Thank you. Hello everybody, I am Anass Shatnawi. I want to present the work done during my PhD that was supervised by Dr. Jamal and Dr. Anass Shatnawi. We will present in this presentation. We start by the context related to our research, then we present the problem and motivation related to our thesis. Then we present the three contributions that have been presented in the thesis, and we finish the presentation by providing the conclusion and the future direction. In software engineering, software reuse task is one of the main engineering activity that is defined as the process of building a new software system based on reusing pre-existing software artifacts. It can be applied different level of abstraction with different software artifacts. It's admitted that software quality and the productivity are improved by applying systematic software reuse. For example, HP demonstrated that the productivity can be improved by a factor 1.5 or 2.5 or more, and quality can be improved by a factor 5 to 10 times. In 1968, systematic software reuse has been announced in the International Conference on Software Reuse. Since this time, many reuse approaches have been presented, starting from reusing source code and go to black box component and end up with domain-specific reuse techniques, which bring the most benefits that can be coming from software reuse. In this presentation, we will focus on component-based software engineering and software product line engineering. Instead of developing each software system individually, software product line engineering promotes systematic software reuse by supporting the development of product families instead of single products. The idea is to manage the communality and the variability between the products by building reusable core assets that may compose feature model, software product line architecture, component, and so on. To understand the main idea of software product line, we have the following reusable components, and we have architecture variability model that describe how to compose these components, and then we can derive many software products by deciding the set of features that need to be in the product. Another way to develop a product family, which is based on reused ad hoc reuse technique, that means we copy and modify existing approaches to meet the new requirements of the new customers. One of the most recently used reuse approaches is component-based software engineering. In this context, software systems are developed based on reusing software components that already built, not from scratch, and having explicit architecture which make them more understandable and reusable entities. And we deal with coarse grain services instead of fine grain services. And when the component independently built open the gate to reuse the component in a new context. Since the interaction between components can be done through their provided and required interfaces, which make the dependencies explicitly described between the components. Instead, applying systematic software reuse requires initial investment to develop the reusable core assets. For example, feature model, components, architecture, and so on. Companies rely on three development approaches. The first one is proactive, where the reusable core assets are developed from scratch, and this required a large investment at earlier step for the planning and analysis, while the return investment can be proven when the products are developed. This makes it as costly and risky approach. Another approach, which is reactive approach, that's really have the idea of incrementally develop the reusable core assets based on the new demands. This reduces the cost comparing to the proactive approach, but it still needs some cost. The third approach is the extractive approach, which refers to reverse engineering existing software systems to identify reusable core assets. This significantly reduces the cost and the quality, and reduce the cost of developing reusable core assets, but it's still an approximation technique, but that can be provided to the software architects to identify the concrete artifacts. In this context of reverse engineering, when we have many software engineering and we apply reverse engineering, we can either derive a concrete artifacts or abstract artifacts such as architecture, concrete artifacts such as component and feature, and so on. In this research, we will focus on reverse engineering reusable entities that can be reused for the development of new software, which are components, and a model that describes how to reuse these components, which is the architecture model. The contribution of our approach is in three directions. The first one is related to reverse engineering existing product applications that by analyzing their source code. We consider in our approach many software systems instead of single software system. The aim of this approach is firstly to support CBSE and secondly to support component re-engineering, software product line engineering from the product variants. After identifying the reusable components that exist in the product variants, we identify the architecture variability between these components to allow the software architect to help him to select the components that may be included in the new software products. Since company need to re-engineer both their applications and their APIs through the migration process, we propose to reverse engineer software components based on the analysis of APIs instead of software applications. Now we will go through the first contribution, which is related to mining software components from product variants. The main idea of our approach is to have a set of product variants and apply our approach to have the reusable component constituting these applications. Many research questions have been solved in this approach. firstly, for example, we identify what's the relationship between the component and the object or classes, and we describe the way that how to identify the component with respect to the classes. And when we have components providing similar functionalities, how to identify similar functionality, and some other research questions. In the state of the art, many approaches have been presented to identify components from single software applications. In this context, they identify a group of classes based on their structural and behavioral dependencies. When the components are identified based on the analysis of single software, the reusability of the component may not be guaranteed. This means that the component, we have no idea about the reusability of the component to develop a new system. We consider, on the other hand, the analysis of multiple software systems to analyze their source code to identify reusable components that already reused in many software systems. This has not been investigated in the literature review. To answer the question, what is the component compared to the object, we provide our mapping model that define a component as a set of object-oriented classes that may belong to different packages, while the component interfaces is represented by classes that have direct links with other component classes, and their public methods constitute their provided interfaces. To measure the quality of a group of classes to form a component, we rely on a previous PhD thesis done here in Marel team. In this thesis, they have it present based on the component's quality, a component quality fitness function. In this context, they move from component characteristics using IOSA model up to reaching object-oriented layer that provide object-oriented metrics that can be used as a quality function to identify the quality of object-oriented classes to form a component. This model is used in our approach as a black box component to measure the quality of a component. The process of this contribution is start by taking a set of product variants and analyze their source code to identify potential components that can be that constitute these applications. Then we identify the variability between these components by identifying similar components providing similar functionalities. And finally, from a group of similar components, we test these components to identify one reusable component that may be representative of this group. When we decide to identify similar components identifying similar functionalities, we back to the product variants that the components identified from. So we see that product variants were developed using copy-paste modify techniques. So classes having similar names provide almost the same functionality, even if some of their methods are override, deleted, or removed or added. Thus, we consider that for class components providing similar functionalities are those sharing the majority of their classes. We identify them based on a clustering algorithm. And then based on the group of similar components, for example, we here have 3 components that are similar. We have the question of how to build one reusable component to represent this group. The classes composing this component can be either shared class that exists in all the products of all the components and non-shared classes. Since that shared classes keep the components belong to, since that shared classes were identified in many products in relation and the quality
as reused together, we consider them as the core of the components. Then we add some non-shared classes to increase the component equality. But how to select an non-shared class? We rely on two criteria. The first one is related to the quality of the component obtained when we add an unshared class. Thus, we consider class maximize the quality as more favorable to be added to the component. The second one is related to the density of the unshared class, where density means that a class, the number of components, including the class, the total number of components included in the cluster. We select a class have high density since it keeps the component belong to many software products. To validate the hypothesis of this contribution, we collect 2 open source product families, 8 variants of mobile media, 10 variants of RQML SPL. The result is presented in this table in terms of number of mined components. We find components exist in many software reused in the product variants. And the validation of our result is done through a research question related to the reusability of the mined component. We consider in this research question that how much the idea of analyzing multiple software systems to provide reusable components compared to the analysis of single software system. Thus, we compare our components with components mined on the analysis of single system. We consider the reusability of components based on checking how many products can reuse this component to the total number of products, and to generalize that, our result can be generalized for independent set of product variants. We rely on K-float cross-validation method. In this context, the product variants are divided into K bars. Each time we apply the approach in K-1 bar, and we test the approach on the K bar of the product variants. And we do it K trials. Here is the result of the reusability validation, which shows that our approach outperforms the traditional approach. In the first contribution, we have present how to identify software components based on the analysis of software product variants. Then, in the second contribution, we represent now how to help the software architect to select components and to develop the architecture of a new software system based on these components. The idea of the second contribution is to take the source code of product variant, apply our approach, and have the architecture variability model. Many research questions related to this contribution. For example, we have a question related to what is the variability in the architecture level, and how to identify this variability in terms of component variability, configuration variability, and so on. How to validate the recoupled software product line architecture. In the state of the art, the approaches suffer from 2 limitations. The first one is that they are not fully automatic, and the second one is that they partially identify software product line architecture. To understand the architecture variability, we have an example of 3 architecture for 3 products. And firstly, we present the component variants with components providing similar functionality. Here we have, for example, CD reader and CD reader writer. They are not completely different components in the architecture, and they are not exactly the same components. So we need to measure the variability in this context. Configuration variability related to appear and disappear of a component in the architecture. This is realized through identification of mandatory components that need to exist in all of the products and optional components. In addition, we need dependencies among components. For example, which component requires the other component, and which component is excluded with respect to the other component. For example, sound source amplifier may be have an and relationship because they exist in all of the products together. The process of this contribution is based on analyzing the source code of and software product variants. We firstly identify the component-based architecture corresponding to each software product variant independently. Based on the identified architectures, we identify component variant to identify the components exist in the many products. Then we use the architectural configuration to be analyzed using formal concept analysis that's used to classify the variability and to understand the distribution of the optional components between the product architectures. And then we provide the software with the client architecture. When software architects have many components, and he wants to think about which components I need to include in the product architecture. So we provide, by our approach, mandatory components, optional components, and 5 kinds of dependencies that inspired from future modeling language. These are identified based on formal concept analysis. We consider as a formal context the software architecture as objects and software components as attributes, where each architecture is described by a set of components included in the architecture. Based on this formal context, we generate a concept lattice that provide us the distribution of the components. Based on this lattice, mandatory components are grouped in the top of the lattice. Components are existing in all of the products. Others nodes having the optional components. Required dependencies related to the obligation selection of a component to select another component. These are identified based on the analysis of parent to child relationship in the formal concept. This a node is required with another node if it's appear before it in the lattice. For example, here we have component 6 require component 5 and component 2. For exclude dependency, we search for conflict relationship between components. Components, they never appear together in the product architectures. We here consider by exclude between 2 nodes if they never appear in the path extracted from the down of the tree, the lattice up to the top of the lattice. Here we have, for example, component 6 and component 7 having exclude relationship. Alternative dependency is simply a generalization of exclude dependency. Instead of taking a pair of components, we speak about a group of components. So we identify them based on the identification of exclude. We consider that a group is constrained by alternative dependency if the set of nodes having each an exclude with all other nodes in the group. And dependency related to the bidirectional version of required dependency. A required B, B required A. So based on the lattice, components appear in the same architecture, always together, are grouped in the same concept. We here have component 5 and component 2 having a relationship. To validate our results, we apply on 2 open source application product variants, head variant, mobile mediate, and variants of health voucher. Here we present architecture variability identified from mobile media. For example, we have one mandatory component composed of having 2 variants, and we have this, for example, optional component having 2 variants. This optional component has 1 variant. This a group of and dependencies between 3 components. The 2 one has and so on. And this is for all. And we have required relationship. We have exclude relationship between the components. To validate the identified variability, we answer 2 research questions. The first one is related to the precision of this variability. To this end, we compare our result with a pre-existing model related to mobile media. The results show that our approach are able to identify the variability, most of the variability, with some variation related to the idea of compositional component. For example, we have one mandatory component, and in the other model have 3 mandatory components. These components represent one component in our architecture and the idea of compositional components. The second research question is related to the correctness of the identified dependencies. We measure this in terms of the precision and the recall. We manually validate. For example, if we have component required another component, we manually validate the functionalities of the first component if they require the functionalities of the second component. This is the result in terms of the recall and the precision. Our approach identifies all of the dependencies that may exist of the product, and giving some noise data that's reduce the precision value. Till now, we present how to identify components from product variants, how to identify the architecture variability that describe the variability between in this product variants, and now to allow the company to re-engineer both the APIs and their applications. We present our third contribution related to identifying components from object-oriented APIs. In the state of the art, many approaches have been presented to identify components from software applications. In this context, we have dependencies realized in terms of structural and behavioral dependencies between the classes. Reverse engineering components based on the analysis of APIs has not been investigated in the literature. In this context, we need a new information. We have a new information. We have how the information related to how software application reuse these APIs. Our goal is to identify a group of classes that provide coarse-grained services to the software applications. In this context, we have two kinds of dependencies. The first one is use pattern-based dependencies. This is related to the fact that some of API classes need to be used together, and this is identified based on the analysis of how software applications have used the API classes, and we realize this through the concept of a frequent use pattern. The second source code based dependency, where we refer to the structural and behavioral dependency between the classes, and this aims to keep the component high quality, and we achieve this through the 3 component characteristic: composability, autonomy, and specificity. We have answered many research questions. For example, we answer how to identify a group of classes used together, and how to use this information to identify API components, and how to identify component interfaces based on these classes, and so on. The main idea behind our approach is, firstly, we consider that the classes frequently used together are guides to identify classes composing component interfaces. Component identification process is driven by the identification of its provided interfaces. Thus, we analyze their structural dependencies with other API classes to identify classes composing the core component and to form a quality-centric component. The process of our approach simply takes as input a set of software applications that use the API and the source code of the API. We analyze the interaction that have been taken between the clients and the API by identifying a frequent use pattern. Then we use the frequent patterns to identify component interfaces, and from each interface we identify the other components based on the structural dependencies to have component-based API. Identification of a frequent use pattern is done through 2 steps. The first one step is related to identify transactions of use of the API clients. We define a transaction as a set of API classes used by a client. In this context, we have a question: what is the client. We have three options. The first one is that the client is a class in the software application. The client is a group of classes in the software application, or the whole software application is considered as one client. And this related to the quality of the frequent pattern. Domain patterns related to functionalities, we consider components in the software applications as a client of the API. Thus, our transaction is related to the set of classes used by a client in the software application. Based on the identified transactions, we rely on FP growth algorithm to identify a frequent use pattern, where a pattern is considered as a frequent if it's reached a predefined quality threshold of interestingness called support that's related to the probability of finding a set of API classes in the transactions. In some cases, many different services, unrelated services, may be used together, and we need to distinguish between their services. Thus, in the second step, we propose to partition, check if we need to partition each frequent use pattern into a set of component interfaces, where each one represents a one component interface. In this context, we rely on three heuristics. The first one is related to the fact that classes that are cohesive are more probably belong to the same functionality and provide the same functionality. To this end, we rely on LCC metric. And the second one is related to the lexical similarity between these classes. We take the information related to real lexical data to identify classes providing the same functionalities. We rely on conceptual coupling metrics. The third one is related to the idea that inside the frequent patterns, maybe we have a strong frequent pattern, classes strongly used together. So we need to take this in consideration. Thus, we consider support value in our heuristic. Based on this heuristic, we propose a quality function that is used in hierarchical clustering algorithm to partition each frequent pattern into a set of component interfaces. After the identification of component interfaces, we need to know how to identify other classes that may collaborate with these interfaces classes to provide the functionality to the application. To this end, we perform as follows. We consider that the interface classes are the initial starting point to form the component, while classes having either direct or indirect links with the interface classes for the search space. And we select a class that maximizes the quality value to be added to the component. We do this incrementally until adding all the search space classes to the components. At each step we add a class, we save the quality value of the components. For example, in this component, we have class 6 that make the components reach the quality at the peak value. Thus, we consider that classes added with before class 6, in addition to class 6, are classes forming the component. This means that class 7 and class 8 are excluded. To validate our assumptions, we experimented on a set of 100 Android applications that use 3 Android APIs. The results are represented in terms of a number of object-oriented elements and number of components in each of the APIs. And the validation is done through 3 research questions. The first one is related to the understandability efforts saved by migrating into component-based API. In this context, we measure the understandability in relation with the complexity. And this is done through 2 directions. The first one is that we reduce the number of API elements by grouping the classes providing the same functionalities into the same components. And the second one is related to the reduction in the individual element complexity. Since we move from objects where objects don't have explicitly described required interfaces, while components have clearly defined their provided and required interfaces. The results show that our approach significantly improved the understandability of the APIs. The second research question aims to measure the usability of the identified components. For this end, we rely on how much related classes are grouped together in the related classes are grouped into the same components. And we measure the reusability of the component based on the number of classes used by the software application to the total number of classes used composing the components. And here we use again the curved validation to generalize that our result can be generalized for independent set of software application in new clients of for the API, and the results show that our result provide reusable components, and we know that as much as the trained client increases, the reusability of the mined component increases. Thus, we recommend to select a large number of clients. The third research question is related to measure how much the idea of using frequent use pattern it brings to the identification value. So we compare our approach with the traditional approach related to identify components from software application, which take only structural dependencies, and we measure the density of the component interfaces by based on their interfaces, number of used interface classes to the total number of interface classes composing the application. The results show that our approach significantly outperforms the traditional approaches. The results also show that the software applications use a less number of components with high density of these component interfaces, and the traditional approach components, for the traditional approach components, the software application uses a large number of components with this density of each component. Here we will go through some of the conclusion and future directions were conducted during this thesis. We present firstly the summary of the contribution. We mainly support systematic software reuse by providing reverse engineering tools to support the development of reusable core assets. The first contribution is related to mine components based on the analysis of software applications developed in the same domain. In this context, we consider by the reusability of a component is increased when the number of products that use the component increases, and this has not been investigated by the literature review. The results show that our approach provides reusable components compared to these identified based on the analysis of single software. The second contribution is related to how to use the identified component to build a new software by identifying software product line architecture of the product variants. Existing approach are either not fully automated or partially identified with the software product line architecture. And the results show that our approach identifies the architecture variability and the dependencies. Here we have a recommendation for the user of our approach is that to select a large number of product variants to improve the precision of our approach. The third contribution is related to how to mine components based on the analysis of APIs and their software applications. This has not been investigated in the existing approaches. We consider by a component classes that are used together and structurally dependent. And the validation shows that our approach improves the reusability and understandability of APIs. The recommendation related to the user of the third approach is that they need to select clients having a large number of API used, and be careful in the selection of the domain of these components, the domain of the software application that use the API. Here we present some limitations related to our approach. Firstly, we rely on static analysis technique to identify the dependencies between the classes, and this don't address the polymorphism and dynamic binding, and don't distinguish between the used and unused source code. However, we propose a solution as a future direction to mine software components and architecture based on dynamic analysis by examining the software system at the runtime. The second limitation is related to the use of clustering technique to group similar components or classes together. This will provide near optimal solution. Maybe other optimization algorithms such as search-based algorithms may provide more accurate near optimal solution. So our future direction is related to investigate genetic algorithm, simulating annealing in our approaches. Third limitation is related to the fact that we measure the usability and the understandability of our approaches based on our own measurement model, and this will maybe somehow unfairness. So to address this, we propose to validate the result of our approach based on a human expert. For example, we take Android applications and we have the Android API. We migrate the applications and we migrate the APIs, and we give the result to the developers to ask him to try to develop software system based on the identified components. The last one is the fourth one is related to the fact that our approach needs the software architect to provide threshold values to facilitate his his task. We propose to develop a visual environment that allow him to interact with the approach at each step and thus modify the results. The last limitation is related to the fact that our approach is relying on the selected software applications, the number of product variants, the number of API clients, and the nature relationship between these applications. For example, for API clients, applications related to the same domain or different domains is different. So thus, we propose to experiment with large number of case studies, to generalize our result, and to we have also other future direction related to, firstly, migrate the identified object-oriented classes, since our approaches provide the first step of the migration process, and we need the transformation process, which is come after our approaches. For example, we propose to solve the transformation of object dependencies into component interfaces, the inheritance and the exception handling, for example. The second one is related to the mapping of requirement variability to the architecture variability. Let's say mapping software product line architecture to feature model to identify which components implement with a given feature. During this dissertation, we have published a list of papers. We have two selected papers during the International Conference of Software Reuse to be extended in the Journal of Systems and Software, and the journals have been submitted on the middle of June. And we have 4 published conference papers. Merci. Thanks. Shukran. Questions? I think it's time.
Just on time.
Okay, so I have to talk in English, I suppose. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. So thank you for your presentation. Of course, she's very dynamic. I appreciate. So I have some comments and some before asking some questions on your presentation on your thesis in general. I have some comments and some very slight criticism on the contribution itself. So what I appreciated in your document especially is the study of the bibliography. So you have something very rich, and you have did something on the top of existing results. You have a very strong analysis of existing contribution result, and you build upon that. And that's a very interesting point because often I have the problem with thesis. People, students, they start from ground zero, okay, and that's a problem because there are a lot of results, and it's very, very difficult to reuse. That's the case, to reuse this result in an effective way, and I think you succeed in this approach. I appreciate this aspect. When I read the thesis, I spent a lot of time reading the bibliography, trying to better understand the problem, not only from the contribution of the author, but also from the bibliography. And I think that's a main strength of the contribution of your work. Okay, there is also again a good reuse of the previous work of the team in general, with, especially with romantic. So of course, you capitalize on existing results, especially this method for measuring the large cohesion and the high coupling of classes component. That also will be promised. I have made some remarks in my slide, in my reports. Of course, I have questions in relation to this remark. So, you have as you may know, there is a very huge industrial problematic in terms of reverse engineering. Okay, if you take the case of object-oriented software, okay, that's a small case compared to applications which are written in very long language. Okay. Once you have defined this perimeter of this object-oriented application, so there are many object-oriented programming language, the nature of each application could be very different. You can have, I can say, very common application without specific utilization of the specific framework, computing framework. If you take the case, for example, of a Java application or C# application, which is based on a very precise computing framework, I take the example of Java EE, for instance. So the code is not is organized in a very strict way in order to obey to the API, to the way you want to code classes, but also components. You have also many configuration information. Okay, and this information is very important. So if you analyze the code, if you try to apply some refactoring to this code, this could be very difficult if you don't take into account all of the configuration data. So the problem is, I'm okay with the contribution, but I think what I am expected in your thesis is the better characterization of the nature of the application. So you can apply what you propose to some kind of application, but you cannot apply in some case, because you can apply, but you will obtain results which not great value because you have no latitude to reorganize. So okay, you can say I can obtain better result, of course, but technically you cannot redesign the components because they obey to specific consideration, and you cannot take away this consideration. That's very important. Another remark. So maybe I'm not sure I understand. So ultimately, the only way you have to assess the contribution is to redesign the existing application that you have analyzed in order to redesign it with the new component that you have extract from your analysis. So this aspect is not so much emergent in your world. So you say, I obtain. So you have some. I appreciate your validation methods. You say, I show you. I can prove to you that I am interested. I have measurements. We saw some charts on the slide, and I have very interesting results. But the ultimate expectation of readers is to prove in the forward engineering process that you have put this new component into practice, and okay, I can demonstrate in an experimental way that okay, the reuse is effective. You can see it. But okay, that's a very slight criticism, but your contribution, the work is very huge. It's very important, so you cannot do all aspects. Okay, for years I suppose. Yes, so that less. Okay, so no problem about that. But it could be interesting for new people. Okay, that build upon the okay. So I have my point remains on the. So I'm okay. In my opinion, if I understand, the idea to have some architecture template is very good idea. To fix something and to be able to say, I can reuse this architecture template in order for the next similar application, just to put component inside, and that's okay. I was surprised by I not yet convinced about that, about the third point, which is about APIs. Anyway, if you are able to, I don't understand yet this aspect. If you are able to, if I understand, to extract some components, you talk about patterns. I'm okay about that. You say so. My feeling, so that's my first question. My feeling is that you only provide just a better way to reuse or to use the API. But so the components are kind of form, kind of shape of an entry point in order to better understand, better reuse, better put into practice the APIs. But you don't have really restructuring of the API. You don't propose that. You propose not to restructure the API. So you change the I don't know, the function, the name of the function or the classes. Did you change that or not? No. Okay. So are we agree together on the fact that you only give insight into the better way to reuse the API? That's all or not? Or you do more? I don't understand this point, even with the talk.
Okay. In fact, our approach can be considered in different directions. The first one is can be, let's say, refactoring tool for by repackaging the API classes in the way that help the software developers to use them, and we can consider them at the design level as a group of classes that may be used together when we define clear interfaces, clear different interfaces, and allow the software applications developers to when they develop software applications by take an interface to take the functionality of the API instead of dealing with, for example, 10 classes. We identify, for example, 3 classes compose the functionalities of the 10 classes and allow them to use it through the interface.
Okay, understand. So,
Yeah.
To better understand, do you, for instance, propose a kind of wrapper? You say, okay, instead of spending too much time understanding all of the class, the function, the interaction, I don't know, So there is a kind of services. This is the kind of abstract component. So this is the entry point. So you start from here. There are only 3 manipulations, and there are a lot of things just underneath. I hope that's okay. So that's your view. I understand. Yes.
Okay.
You okay?
I think the idea is related to the ultimate goal of my research was to re-engineer all of that, re-engineer, for example, the API, component-based API from object-oriented web. In this context, we have many steps. The first one is the reverse engineering, to have the higher abstraction, describe for example, groups of classes, and then we have also the second step, which is complete the transformation by, for example, constructing the component interfaces, making the transformation. We delete, for example, the inheritance, because in the component there is no inheritance, component model, and so on, and end by applying forward engineering based on for each group of classes to have a component. So in our work, we have the reverse engineering, and one of the future work is to have the reverse engineering to have the complete component-based software entity.
So okay, yeah. So you want the overview of all of the problems, but you just I try to understand what's when you stop. Okay, that's okay about that. Just another not a question, another remark. I was in your presentation, you want to insist on your study of data mining algorithm. So I didn't spend a lot of time during the talk, but as a report, I have to underline this point. What was very complex and difficult in your work is to study another area of computer science, which is mining in general, and to apply that for components. And you have a lot of formal stuff in your thesis, and this was probably a very good point in your contribution, because understanding software engineering having a lot of work, and also at the same time trying to understand another field and reusing again all of this result to apply that for reverse engineering is a very interesting point in your contribution. What I have to say. So I think that will be not maybe later.
Thank you. So, maintenant je vais passer la parole.
Okay. First of all, thank you for your presentation. Thank you for your supervisors to invite me in this jury. I have to concur with the comments about the quality of the state of the art. That's to me it's one of the most dense and rich and well organized state of the art I've seen so far in PhD documents. So that was very, very interesting, and it's a very, very good starting point for anybody that will continue your work. The overall quality of the document is very good, and the overall quality of your research is very good. I also have the same, maybe Frank did not phrase it this way, but he had to recall his remark from his report. That means that you did not really answer some of those remarks through your talk, and I must admit that some of my remarks have not yet also been addressed by the talk. So I have to. But one of the main points I raised in my report has been taken into account. It was the weakness of the conclusion, and I've seen that the document has evolved. So that's a very good point. I enjoyed your presentation. As Frank said, it was dynamic, very with lots of quality. And the thing I was missing, so that's going to be my. So I have a set of very small questions, very technical maybe, and some more difficult questions. But let's start with the first one. One of my points was the lack of information about the tools, about I mean, there's no way you could have done all this stuff without any tools, and it seems that it's not important to you. So can you just tell me that there's no tool? The tool are too obvious or not yours or whatever, so you don't want to talk about them, or what's? Tell me about your tooling environment to do all this stuff.
Okay. For example, for the static analysis, we rely on JDT Eclipse plugin to extract abstract syntax tree. For data mining algorithm, we implement the implementation. We take the pseudocode from the data mining box, and we implement. And we have test. I know there is threat to validity related to our implementation. We don't use, for example, Wika data mining technique. But then sometimes we take the Java ML library, and we take the pseudocode, the Java code, and modify the data set to take, for example, component classes and so on. And for all this, also for frequent use pattern.
But you don't consider all this stuff as contribution, so you don't talk about that. That's your point of view.
Yeah.
It's just a question.
No. I consider them. Maybe the use of them as its contribution, but maybe I focus on the contribution in the idea.
Okay.
Not on the tool, because you need.
I think
sometimes you can use JDT or other analysis tool, but the main idea is static analysis.
Okay, I don't want to insist because I mean that it was just an advice, or I mean, okay. So let's start with a small question, maybe in the order of the slides, so it's going to be more easy. So the 38 slide, if you go back, you mentioned an exclude relationship. Okay, try 38 and then. It's in the diagram where you have a relationship between
32,
38.
38.
Okay, you talk a little bit later about an exclude. Yes, this one. So I don't see it in the diagram. The exclude relationship.
In the diagram, the result. Yeah.
Yes, I mean, how do you show it in a diagram that those two components exclude each other? You don't see
in which diagram?
This one.
In this one?
You have a specific notation?
Yes. Do you have any special link between those two to mention? But
no.
Because you say it orally.
Yeah,
those two are
have
exclusive
because they never appear on the same architecture.
So, but how do we see that in the diagram? With that's those blue stuff, or
no? Yeah. How to identify them?
No, how to show that in a diagram? You don't have any diagram that shows that.
This is FCA. This is lattice. Okay, the result of FCA. This is lattice. It's they use this to identify that.
Okay, so there's no specific. And I had a question about this exclude relationship. The fact that two components never appear in the actual variants don't mean that they will not appear together in the future. So how is it very important to? I mean, it seems to me very strong to say, oh, those two components exclude.
Yeah.
It just happened that they have never been together. That's it. No.
Yeah.
Why is it so important to have this exclude relationship? Is it really important?
That's a nice question. Here we mentioned that one of the disadvantage of reverse engineering technique is that we provide approximation. So, and then we give the architect our result, and we can select the result that he wants. For example, we say that we have a large number of components. We have nothing. We have nothing about the information how these components are related to provide to build the new system. Here we provide the architect information. For example, we say these components have not been used together, and they may have exclude relationship, and we don't have the final decision that they have exclude relationship. And our results show that for the exclude, we have the recall, we identify all of the exclude, and we have a precision because our approach identify
incorrect exclude ones.
So you see it as more an help, and you count on the knowledge of the architect. Something. Okay. 4 slides later, about the application you have used for validating this part on 42. You mentioned 2 applications, and those 2 applications are in Java.
Yeah.
Right. Isn't it why choosing 2 applications in the same programming language? Maybe a little bit related to the first question of Frank about the fact that specific application kinds are I mean, you have not really yet defined the kind of application you address. So why do you choose the 2 applications in Java? Isn't it a VA or
in fact, our approaches target to all object-oriented languages in general. Since that all of object-oriented language have the same main structure, let's say classes and methods and attributes,
multiple inheritance?
this is a different one. This is a variant, but it's not considered a core difference between. We say we go move from different technology to different technology because multiple inheritance, and it exists in Java in other way. It's that you can implement many interfaces. So we apply on Java applications. We generalize our results for Java applications, and our result in general can be we can get the average result when we apply. For example, I think I did not apply in C++, for example, or C#. Okay, we think we have almost the same curve because we have deal with component and the main relationship with the classes and the main relationship between the classes, method call and access attribute. Yeah,
I still think it would have been a good validation.
Yeah. And for this point, we consider that experimenting with different technologies. Yes, I mentioned it in the conclusion of the menu description that we propose that it's the mutation, and we propose to take C++ and C# applications.
Okay. I'd like to come back to this API question, Frank. How could you define the links between your contribution 3 about API and your contribution 1 about identifying sets of class that goes together?
Okay.
I mean, it seems that they are very close somehow, or that you could have. I mean, now with the looking back at your work, okay, let's say you have done the 3rd contribution first. Could have you used this contribution to improve or to facilitate the contribution number 1, or would you say that, or can you tell me the links between those 2?
In the solution,
yes,
the idea related to the solution. It could be linked in terms of identifying patterns. In the first contribution, we identified patterns of components used in many software systems. We take this pattern and add it to the existing approaches. And in the API, we take the patterns, but here we have a customer, let's say the software applications, and we have a shop or market, which is the API. And the customer, we simulate the idea like this. I am a software developer, I have application, I went to the market, to the API, I select some classes and take these classes and reuse it in my application. And here we find, for example, in the customer habits example, for example, we find milk and bread as are brought together. So maybe there is an information. This is a hidden information. Allow, for example, the decision maker to take a new decision. And when we simulate this, I need, for example, when I use activity, I need to use context in the Android API. So this information need to be taken to when we formulated the components from the API. So the idea is taking the patterns into account.
Okay. Now I have a question about your starting point for identifying. I can't remember which one it was, but you use quality fitness metrics, right? Yeah. It seems to me that the impact of this function is very important in your final result. Have you have you tried to abstract from this and to identify how much, for example, if I decide to use another function because I read a nice paper and someone provide a nice new function, do I have to redo everything? Is there a kind of straightforward way to just change the function in your algorithm, or do I have to rework your contribution?
Suppose
how much it is founded on this particular function, or how much it is not? That's my question.
Okay. You can consider it as a plug and play component. Okay, you can plug it
completely
and add the other approaches directly.
Okay, sounds good to me. Let's see. That might be a more difficult question. If you consider the fact that you know, or you are aware that your Java coding is going to be re-engineered into components, could you provide some guidelines in the way I should code in my object-oriented to facilitate the identification afterwards? So that goes outside the scope of your PhD, right? But I mean, is there some heuristics you could provide out of your work on people that program in object orientation to facilitate the identification of components afterwards? Would you say that there's enough material here to get those heuristics, or?
As you said, it's not my specialty, but I will give you my point of view. I think that object-oriented programming language now, let's say component-based programming language now, it's like object in 19th. So when the people thought about, we have a procedural language, and you come to us and say object, we have object, and we have object-oriented language, they ask themselves maybe the same question. Now, object-oriented component-based programming language is still in the research side. There is, so for example, the conference of component CDSE, there is some other work presented for proposing programming language that supports component-based development. So now this is still waiting the industry to take the final decision to put the money to develop compilers and so on. But there is till now, for example, OSGI, let's say it's component-based model, and it's developed based on object-oriented language. So it can be somehow used bundle. Yeah, we have it's one of our future work is to deal with this point, how to group for the group of classes used as bundle in the OSGI.
Okay. One last, if I have time, still on the a little bit outside the scope itself. Let's say that you have done your re-engineering from a Java, let's say Java code, and then for some reason the Java code has evolved on its side, and you want to re-engineering this evolution. Do you have to redo everything from the evolution itself, or could you capitalize from the previous re-engineering you have done and just add something? Or I mean, is there a kind of compositionality in your approach? You know what I mean? You have a software at commit number 1, you do your re-engineering of components, and for some reason the Java code has still evolved, and you have commit number 2. If you want to re-engineering the application at commit number 2, do you have to redo everything at this level of the code, or could you just, I don't know, work on the diff of the Java code to improve the diff of your component model? You got my point?
Yeah, I got you.
Maybe it's
let's say not a new thesis, maybe new research direction.
Okay.
You take, for example, we study the pattern in the Java evolution source code, and take this pattern and study how the components should be
For example.
take the evolution based on the Java code.
Okay, but so for your approach, I have to redo it at the Java code from scratch.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah, I think that to take the new source code and apply the approach.
I agree that it's another basis. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Maintenant, je vais passer la parole à quelqu'un de. Ouais. C'est mon public.
So thank you very much for your presentation. I really appreciate your work as a software engineer. The fact that you are going to try to automatically find the best way to make components for the users. So I would position myself as a potential user of the technologies. As you know, my team build video games, CD games, and when we start a new project, we ask ourselves this question: how can I benefit from all the tools that already exist? And when we finish project, we do the same thing. We try to build and to make our library so we can reuse them, these components in future projects, but we do them manually. And I've seen your method, automatic, which is nice. And probably I'm going to ask a question at the technical part. I will ask a question concerning an aspect that was missing in your document, your presentation, concerning the intellectual property. When you are going to make an analysis of source code coming from different projects that are under different licenses, how can you make decision in composing these components? Does your method include that, or in the future is it easy to include these aspects?
In our approach, we consider that you have the source code and you have the license. Even if you choose, as a company, you choose applications that develop in your company and you have already the license, or you pay the source code from other company and you use open source application exist in OpenForge and Google Code or other open source repositories. Indeed, now the reuse committee take attention of how to identify, for example, the reusable component based on the analysis of open source projects, the internet, and to how to analyze these projects and to identify components from this. The idea of the license have not been taken in our thesis. We consider that you are a company and you have your license for your source code. Yeah, or you use open source codes.
Even in the open source world, there is not only one license, different licenses. You have, if you merge a component which version 2 with another component in HPL, what will be the result? You have to take into account this consideration, or at least identify them for the user himself previously, so we can make best choice.
Okay.
And then I've seen also another way to use your work, more positive perhaps. Perhaps you can help some project managers to decide what's the right level of protection. So if you use your method and to identify top components of your lattices, they are more general. So probably you can make an intellectual property which is less constrained. Can you see that you can extend your work to identify what are part of your project that are most interesting, most general?
Yeah.
So you can decide the right level of intellectual property.
Yeah, if you can take, for example, formal concept analysis and consider the object-oriented source code, and you have applied, for example, in your project, you have many source codes. I believe that when you have copy a class to another one, you just add or remove some methods. You don't completely keep the class with the same name and completely change the implementation of the class. It's rarely happens in this case. So you can take the formal context as the project is the object, and let's say take the picture. Here. You have the projects and you have the classes, and each project exists the classes, and based on FCA you can identify here the set of the classes that exist on all of the product, and so on the distribution of other classes, and you can identify the dependencies based on the classes.
So now I have a specific question. In your slide 53,
50.
it's also
Oops.
also so 58.
58.
Diagram. So you have like an incremental method trying to find reach peak. What would happen if you add class 10 or 9 after you go to better evaluation of the quality?
For example, you mean by this?
Yes, exactly.
You go here.
You are trying to find it like right.
Yeah.
That,
It's a nice question. Yeah. Here, for example, we have a class 1. When we add another class, the quality measurement is based on the dependencies between the classes. So suppose that the class 1 and the class 2 have high dependencies. So the value will be increased. And if we add a class, for example, 3 has 2 dependencies with the class 2 and no dependencies with the class 1. So the quality will decrease. And we add class 4. Class 4 has high dependencies with class 3 and the class 1. And here the quality will improve. And this would mean by increasing and decreasing the quality here, so that we select the quality. It's not incremental process. For example, if we take the number of classes, we have 1 class, 2 class, 3 class. It will not be decreased. It will be always increased.
So you mean that the order of the order in which you add the class has no importance? You will reach the same,
No,
maybe not at the same point, but you will reach the same peak.
If I know that we have a class 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, they will be included in the component. We have the decision, and we take randomly adding them. After adding all of the classes, we have the same quality value. But if we change the order, we change the curve will be changed.
So the condition is that all the classes must be evaluated. If you stop the evaluation, you are not sure that you have reached the optimal.
Exactly.
Thank you.
Maintenant, je voudrais passer la parole à notre directeur de thèse. Donc, commençons par Anass Shatnawi, qui est avec nous. Vous le voyez là.
Hello? Yeah. I give you the mic.
It's my turn?
No.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, because I hear Anass when he talks, but I don't hear the jury. So it's like the Jeopardy game. I have the answer and they have to get the questions. Okay. First of all, bonjour à tout le monde.
Bonjour.
So I really enjoyed the presentation, and in general working with Anass. He is very creative and he did nice work. I have only one question. My question is related to slide 45 with the results of the precision and recall for the variability. And if we look at these results, the worst precision was for the or alternative relationship.
Which class? 45.
Slide 45. Okay. I'll just write 45 on the keyboard and then return, and you will have the slide. Okay. So if we look at the precisions,
yeah.
If we look at the precisions, the worst one, the one with less than 50% is the one of the or alternative.
Yeah.
So, and do you have an explanation on why this low precision, if you put this in the context of your heuristics or your approximations? So you derive the alternative from the exclude, and it seems that your strategy is not working that much.
Could you formulate the final question?
Pardon me?
The final question. Formulate the final question.
How do you explain the low precision of the or identification?
Okay, thank you. Here again, we our approach identify approximation. So maybe identification of all dependencies, our heuristic was to identify, we exclude the components having other relationships, and we conducted the others that have no OR dependency as having OR dependency, since that the nature relationship between the two components to be included in one architecture configuration is that can be exist. So when in the case of having exclude required, we exclude the pairs of having our relationship. So here the result, the interpretation of the result, we agree that we identify all of the OR groups that can be exist in the architecture configuration, and we have identified, and the accuracy, the percentage of the this truth one is let's say 42% of the identified ones. That to improve this accuracy, you need to improve increase the number of product variants included in your case study. For example, don't take only, for example, 10 variants of health voucher. If you can take 100 variants, that all will be reach more accuracy, because in your require exclude relationships, in your required relationship may be appear, and these dependencies violate the incorrect OR dependencies, and thus we improve the precision of the OR dependencies. So it's not a problem with the approximation itself. It's considered as the main problem is the number of product variants, and let's say the variability taken from the product variants. That's all.
Okay. Yeah, I was guessing that this is a less frequent relationship, and then you don't have enough data in your experiments. So yeah, this is exactly what I was looking at it as an answer.
Okay.
That's all for me.
Thank you.
Thank you. Donc maintenant, je vais passer la parole.
I have got a question for Anass, because we work together, and I know what he present here. I have just to say that I was present to work with Anass for this thesis. It was really a pleasure to work with him for many reasons. The first reason, because his motivation, he's really motivated by the research. He's not motivated only for having degree of PhD, but he's really a researcher. He wants really to do research, and this is that's make easy to work PhD and collaborate with him. Second reason, because he have a really scientific spirit. He asked himself every time three questions: what, why, and how, and he compare his. You do remark about the state of the art. He before starting working in some research question, he studied all the state of the art to compare to validate the idea, to validate the motivation, and that is a good product which make working with PhD student easy. Third point that I appreciated when working with Anass is the having this go to validate each time, each result, each theoretical result must be validated by experimental with empirical result. That was very good and very good quality by when working with Anass. To finish my remark, I said that for me, Anass is one of the best PhD students that I have until now. Thank you.
Yes. So, now, sorry. First of all, I'd like to say that I appreciate very much reading the description. On the one hand, it's very clear, it's well written. In particular, I like the rigor that you use to, on the one hand, to analyze the state of the art, and on the other hand, for each of the contributions, to experimentally validate the results. Having said that, I have two points I'd like to ask you. One, you also read, point out one of the reports from the rapporteur is the point about the non-functional requirements. Because let's see, when you speak about architecture, architecture is basically guided by non-functional requirements. Yeah. So the question is, how could we take into account, for example, extension or of your work, the non-functional requirements in order to, let's say, have the architecture generated take into account that guidance? Could you comment on this?
So the question is how we can integrate non-functional requirements in our approach. Okay. Let's take as example non-functional requirements. For example, the reusability is a non-functional requirement. Yeah, and the main goal of our approach is to improve the reusability. So we take non-functional requirement, but not directly. The understandability, the maintainability is taken by migrating, for example, objects having not explicit dependency, having implicit dependency, and we migrate to components based software engineering, and we have explicitly described dependency. So the maintainability, the entities, let's say, all of the entities are improved. If we take, for example, this non-functional requirements, which are done.
My question is really in the sense of, for example, if I'd like to, for example, improve maintenance, so to be able to generate the architectures, take into account, let's say, the maximization of that.
Yeah. The maximization. The maximization is firstly done through complete the reverse engineering approach. So because we have two steps, we are go through one steps and we
we don't see the result because we need to move the other step. When we have completely integrated component-based systems with the component really interact with the interfaces. So when you have to do the maintainability, for example, when you want, for example, to make a change in a component, the other components will not affect. We need only to update the interface description and to tell the components, or we have, for example, if we have an update in the interface, we need to tell the other component, oh, we have an update in the interface and take this in consideration. While the other components inside it, or their interfaces don't need to be changed. And this allows, for example, the maintenance process. So we take an example, the change impact analysis.
Another fact is about, let's say, two these properties of all algorithms, that is related to the correctness of the algorithm, that are soundness and completeness. Have you thought about those two properties, about the soundness of the algorithm that we propose and about the completeness of those algorithms?
We did not go deeply in this context, but we know that, for example, in some cases, to have a completeness solution, we present the optimal solution result, the optimal solution algorithm. And this algorithm requires, for example, NP-hard problem. Let's say the partitioning algorithm is NP-complete problem, and we need a heuristic. We need a non-polynomial time to identify the optimal solution. So for this, for example, for our heuristic, for example, for some algorithm, you provide the two options. The optimal solution, if you want the optimal solution and you have the time and you care about how much the algorithm will take time, so you can use this one. If you are need the speed with this accuracy, you can use the approximation algorithm.
Yes, perhaps another question is this time not about what I don't not about the possibility. Because let's say today, if you take into account improvement in the industry, more than 80% of the new projects are based on service-oriented architecture. So my question is, how you can work with the group in order to take into account service-oriented architectures in this context? So instead of, let's say, generating a component-based architecture, generating a component-based architecture that to implement service-oriented architecture.
If we think about migrating to service-oriented architecture, both process to components or to service-oriented architecture share the same base system, which is identifying a group of classes that provide the service of the component or the functionality of the service. Let's say like this. And then we did identify this group. We have the reverse engineering. With the forward engineering, we select, for example, we see that we will go to the component-based development. Here we can transform this group of classes into services with respect to the orchestration and the interfaces of the services. So I think that our result can work in both for the reverse engineering step, and for the forward engineering, we have two future directions, state fund direction, component and service.
Thank you. Last question. Let's say, for you, let's say in one sentence to some extent, what is the major contribution of your
One sentence?
sentence?
Or more? The high level is to to keep, to invest the previous existing software to move to the new technologies. We don't need to redevelop everything from scratch. This is my point. Thank you.
No, not a question, just a comment about the non-functional properties committee of service. That's very important because, for instance, you cannot, from a refactoring viewpoint, you cannot, for instance, group two components together because of security reasons, for instance. If you have the example, if you have a class injector, the class is based on a reflection, which for several reasons don't use the security manager, and if you have a very sometimes very critical class is very calculation which is based on security and control some aspect. You cannot put them together in the same component. So if you the quality of service, there are three main features: performance, security, and safety. Safety is about reliability, the fact that you don't have failure, and that's very important. And so if you take into these three features, main features of architecture in general, so the way you can apply the method can be different with different elements. It can be improved, but yeah, it can be improved, but this works for many applications that don't have they do not have security concern, or that's often the case. But it's very important.
But the example that you take, that, for example, this information can be used to identify execute dependency between components, because these components have execute instead of only using the occurrences.
Yeah.
So we can add new information to improve the result.
I think you can extend it without great difficulty what you want. So,
Paris. Não me lembro do nome do lugar. Eu estava na sala. Thanks for the presentation and all the few answers to the different questions. We'll now deliver.
You need to go outside?
yes, of course.
Juste le bloc de division
Vous voulez pas un café? Tu veux un café?
Qui veut Jean-Michel, tu veux un café?
C'est pas ton problème.
Non, non, c'est bon. Un café, tu veux un café? Je vais demander à Houari s'il veut un café. Hein?
Chez lui. Je vais lui dire.
Oui, je sais. Houari.
Oui.
Tu es encore là. En fait, juste, on va prendre 30 secondes de dégourdir un petit peu les jambes et après, on va revenir pour la délibération. Tu restes connecté?
Ouais, je bouge pas.
Ok, ça marche. Je vais mettre pour qu'on puisse te voir, en fait. C'est mieux. Elle est là. Ah oui, c'est vrai, c'est mieux. Oui, maintenant, il est connecté. Je ne sais pas quelle machine. C'est celle-ci. Oui, et pourquoi?
Je crois qu'il met sur votre écran. Je ne sais pas comment il bascule. Il doit avoir une combinaison de touches pour basculer de l'un à l'autre.
On va revenir.
On va projeter une carte, on va juste
Ouais.
projeter sur l'écran, on va juste être en face.
Oh, ouais, je vais chercher le café.
On m'a dit qu'il allait faire très chaud chez vous.
Oh là là, oui.
C'est les cas.
40 degrés à partir de demain.
40 degrés demain, oui, et pendant presque toute la semaine, ils ont prévu chaud. Ouais.
Eh bien, Non, ici ça va, on est autour de 22, quelque chose comme ça, donc c'est excellent.
Bon, après, il doit faire 22 en Bretagne. Enfin, pas ta Bretagne, mais plus au nord, Saint-Malo, tout ça.
À Vannes aujourd'hui, donc ça doit être autour de 28.
28 à Vannes? Ils sont tous à l'hôpital, hein?
Ah oui. Ils sont à la plage.
À la plage.
Toulouse, il fait chaud.
À Toulouse, il fait chaud, on a l'habitude.
Surtout sa piscine. Hein? C'est bien pas.
Pour ceux qui sont en appartement, quoi.
Juste les papiers pour les... Non, les remboursements. Les remboursements,
Comme ça, préparer les petites enveloppes. Sur Internet.
Cadeau.
C'est bon. Ouais.
Pour toi.
Commercial. Service. Caroline.
Caroline.
Efficace. C'est une personnelle sénat.
Non, nous, on est les deux. Ah oui, non, plus.
Pour dire que c'était encore une facile.
Non, mais c'est une débarrasse de beaucoup de tâches administratives, c'est ça. Je pense que vous avez vu pour les jurys. Non, mais toi, tu veux en voiture, donc mais pour organiser, par exemple, c'est très bien. Tu lui dis tac, tac, tu prends contact avec elle, tu organises son voyage, et c'est bon.
Non, mais
maintenant, ça devient une exception, donc voilà.
C'est tellement rare que.
Bien sûr. D'accord. Qui veut du sucre, qui veut pas? Pas de sucre. Toi, tu veux du sucre ou pas? Oui, c'est bon. Oui, c'est bon.
Merci.
Merci.
Enfin, c'est pire au niveau de l'école doctorale.
Tu sais, regarde, moi, j'ai reçu aucun mail, aucune information comme quoi il faut venir chercher le PV. Je suis allé les chercher, ils m'ont dit oui, il y a quelqu'un qui l'a récupéré. Et après, parce qu'il informe le TISA que lui, il ne lit pas le français, tu vois. Donc, il fait lire le mail par quelqu'un d'autre, et donc c'est notre TISA qui est parti le chercher. Donc, tu vois, oui, c'est ça.
C'est pas parce que quelqu'un arrive, il est le copain.
Les gens, c'est ce que disait Marianne, pour les autres fois, donc, tu vois,
Moi, quand je suis arrivé, je dit, c'est qui l'a récupéré? Je ne sais pas. Il m'a dit, c'est une jeune fille.
Ah, d'accord.
C'est possible.
Tu le vois attends, ouais, je rapproche le PC comme ça.
C'est surtout qu'ils nous entendent.
Ah oui, je vais rapprocher, je vais rapprocher. Ouais.
Comme ouais, j'ai ça. Comme ça, c'est USB. Ça, c'est bien. C'est impossible. Ah, moi, j'ai ça. C'est super bien. J'avais dit au niveau que je l'avais acheté.
Parce que les micros directionnels, les micros, ils sont le jack. C'est pas cher en plus. Ça dépanne.
Là, c'est bon, vous allez?
Oui, très bien.
On va commencer. Donc, pendant l'abstinence,
Tu as pris des notes.
je vous ai écouté.
Tu as rédigé le rapport.
Exactement.
C'est un bon président.
Ah, donc maintenant, ce que je propose, c'est de lire ce que j'ai écrit et ensuite on revient sur chaque point.
Peut-être tu peux le, si tu veux. Ouais, tu prends juste le, voilà, le KPI là.
Ok, Monsieur Anass Shatnawi a présenté avec assurance et pédagogie son travail de thèse sur le support à la réutilisation par l'ingénierie et les aspects composants à partir du sujet. Son exposé très dynamique a fait clairement ressortir la démarche rigoureuse de conduction des travaux et notamment la validation expérimentale des résultats. Dans ce cadre, le jury a particulièrement apprécié la qualité de l'analyse de l'état de l'art, très approfondie et pertinente, et également que les contributions de la thèse ont été construites en capitalisant sur les résultats précédents à l'état de l'art et de l'art de son équipe. Il tient aussi à souligner l'originalité de l'application des techniques de flux de données à la rétro-ingénierie. Lors de ses réponses aux questions nombreuses et variées, M. Anass Shatnawi a montré sa maîtrise de ces sujets difficiles qui nécessitent à la fois de vastes compétences au niveau concret et abstrait, la programmation de GER, l'algorithmique, la flux de données, la conception par composants, les lignes de produits logiciels et les architectures de référence. Pour toutes ces raisons, le jury a l'écoute de proposer, de décerner, ou proposer au président de l'université de Montpellier de décerner à M. Anass Shatnawi le grade de directeur en affaires. Donc, on revient sur les.
Il ne manque rien. Il ne manque rien, oui, parce que d'habitude, on parle des travaux, on parle de l'oral, on parle des réponses aux questions.
Tous les adjectifs,
Est-ce que tu as fait ça?
voilà, pendant la vraie version. Je peux prendre paragraphe par paragraphe. Dans le premier paragraphe, M. Anass Shatnawi a présenté avec assurance et pédagogie son travail de thèse sur les supports à la réutilisation par rétro-ingénierie des articles composant partie du sujet du projet. Son exposé très dynamique a clairement ressorti la démarche rigoureuse de conduction des travaux et notamment la validation expérimentale des résultats.
Oui, parce que attends, on va projeter peut-être, c'est comme ça tu. Ah, c'est HDMI, t'as de HDMI? D'accord, je ne sais pas maintenant. Je pense qu'il faut appuyer là pour avoir la pas un adaptateur, si. Ah, c'est pas le même. Ah, c'est pas HDMI. Tu peux. Ah, mais non. Toi, tu peux pas. Le A6 ici. Vas-y, tiens.
Attends, je l'ai.
Mais on va projeter là-bas dans ce cas-là. Ah, t'as.
Même la planète, maintenant, ça va pas.
Ah bah, c'est l'esprit qui l'a fait. La ligne soit marquée tout seul, c'est sûr. Ça va être pire quand
Ah, est-ce qu'il est branché dans HDMI? Il faut que je change pour que ce soit. Ah, c'est
Il
bon.
fait tout seul, il fait tout seul.
Non, on n'est pas
C'était sur la dynamique, c'est moi qui l'avais donné. Moi, je voulais mettre vivant, en fait. Les vivants, j'aurais mis sont exposés juste parce que dynamique, peut-être que c'est trop grossier. C'est peut-être pas très vivant, mais vivant, je enfin, vivant pour bien montrer que toi, c'était.
Il n'était pas trop statique. Voilà. Il n'était pas là de son endroit.
Vivant, ça me paraît plus positif.
Moi, c'est dynamique, il peut bouger dans tous les
Voilà,
sens.
dynamique, ça veut dire, bon, ça se coule, mais.
C'est vrai.
Vivant, ça veut dire vivant et puis
Ouais.
dilaté. Si tu veux, tu prends. Enfin, t'es pas en train de m'oublier, quoi.
Je suis d'accord avec toi.
Vivant et.
Je suis d'accord.
Voilà, juste pour. Ça me paraît plus positif.
D'autres points, tu peux donner un paragraphe?
Ouais, est-ce que tu nous entends?
Oui, oui, oui.
D'accord. Ah oui, mais tu as entendu ce qu'il a dit Flavio?
J'ai entendu la lecture du draft
Ouais.
et j'ai entendu Franck proposer vivant au lieu de dynamique.
D'accord, donc tu as bien. Ouais, moi, ça me va.
C'est bon, donc pour le premier paragraphe. Passe au deuxième. Dans ce cadre, je vais particulièrement apprécier la qualité de l'analyse de l'état de l'art, de la profondité, et également que les contributions de la thèse ont été construites en capitalisant sur des résultats précédents dans le l'art et de l'art de son étude. Je tiens aussi à souligner l'originalité de l'application des techniques d'études du données à la référence.
Oui, il a utilisé pour la deuxième contribution. Pour la fouille de données, c'est plutôt la troisième contribution qui était pour les quantificateurs. Après, il y a, pour la deuxième, c'était l'analyse formelle de concept qui était utilisée. Donc, on n'est pas obligé de tout citer.
Il va comme qu'est-ce qu'il va faire après?
Candidat pour des postdocs, il a continué pour des postdocs, il a continué pour ici.
Il va demander sa qualité.
Ici en France, non. Non, de toute façon, il n'a pas enseigné, il est anglophone, il ne parle pas français.
Ça s'embête sur les mots.
Bon, j'ai vu globalement une petite correction. Alors moi, ce que je mettrais, c'est avec une vaste compétence, je mettrais tant théorique que pratique, plutôt que niveau clair. Mais ça, c'est de la forme, c'est pas
Oui, non, mais...
tant niveau théorique que pratique.
Mais la forme, quelquefois, a des incidences sur le fond. Tu sais, ça peut être interprété...
Est-ce que les rapports portent uniquement sur la soutenance, pas sur la recherche en général?
On essaie de faire passer des messages à travers les rapports de soutenance.
Non, on évoque aussi le travail. Parce que souvent, c'est le seul document qui est lu. Les gens ne prennent pas le temps de lire les rapports écrits.
Moi, je vais faire une remarque par rapport à ta question, qui a une question par rapport aux pratiques en France, on va dire, pour faire ça. De mon point de vue, en fait, un rapport de soutenance, c'est la soutenance, comme selon la vie. Et il y a pour moi une déviance de trop parlé de le problème il est qu'il y a deux rapports sur l'écrit. Je veux dire, les rapports, c'est les rapports passifs. Dans le cas des qualifications, par exemple, sur la partie écrite, les gens qui sont des candidatures, moi j'ai vu les rapports pour l'évaluation de l'écrit et le rapport. Non, pour moi, il y a une déviance là-dessus. Effectivement, donc après, pour répondre à sa question, oui, les gens commencent à parler de l'écrit. Alors, à mon avis, je pense que au départ, c'est pas évident. Il faut faire des choses. Pour moi, il faut faire des choses simples. Un rapport de suffisance, c'est un rapport de
Non, mais on ne parle pas du document.
Oui, c'est bien, mais c'est l'évaluation du travail, c'est pas du rapport. C'est du
Non, mais
travail.
c'est bien comme il a fait, parce que justement, moi ça me va bien, parce que là, pour le coup, c'est pas, on peut pas. Et puis, donc, si je puis me permettre, donc, partons pour la dernière phrase. Moi, j'irai directement, le jury unanime décerne. Non, décerne. Parce que de toute façon, c'est le président. On décerne, on est jury souverain, le président, s'il ne veut pas lui donner le droit d'atteindre, on ne sait pas. J'espère pas. Mais on est jury souverain. Je ne sais pas, oui, c'est le président qui décerne à la fin. C'est implicite de toute façon. Soit c'est lui qui lui décerne, soit il ne peut pas aller contre lui. Il décerne, soit il peut aller contre lui. De toute façon,
Est-ce que réellement c'est possible? C'est un peu plus grand. Le jury décide. Il peut dire non. Mais ça doit être géré. Il doit justifier.
Il peut motiver,
C'est que j'ai vu des pots de vin qui ont circulé.
Il y a un jury,
Deux cafés, deux cafés, un bon resto. C'est inadmissible.
Je voulais juste dire peut-être ça se voit dans l'exposé, mais moi, ce que j'ai, mon opinion depuis le temps que j'ai passé à travailler avec Anass, c'est j'aimerais bien faire ressortir un peu l'autonomie et la créativité, parce que on est des superviseurs, il a travaillé plus avec Jamel qu'avec moi, mais les choses qu'il a présentées, les solutions, viennent de lui, et vient de lui il les a mis jusqu'au bout, c'est-à-dire on parlait de validation, des choses comme ça. Donc je pense que par rapport à d'autres étudiants que j'ai supervisés ou que j'ai regardé en thèse, ils se démarquent un petit peu par rapport un peu à la créativité et à l'autonomie. Donc je ne sais pas si on peut mentionner ces deux caractéristiques ou pas dans le rapport.
Oui. Par rapport à cette remarque, peut-être sur la première phrase du troisième paragraphe, lors de ses réponses aux questions de nos évalués, en gros, il a pris ça serait l'autonomie par rapport aux questions.
Ou on peut dire ces réponses montrent sa créativité ou des choses comme ça.
Ou alors juste avant, il tient à souligner l'originalité de l'application. Ça peut être, il tient à souligner ce que tu viens de dire là, toi, l'autonomie et l'activité, comme par exemple l'originalité. Ça peut venir compléter cette phrase-là, cet aspect-là. Je ne sais pas comment.
L'autonomie et la créativité du candidat. Après, je pense qu'il ne faut pas faire de posation pour les deux phrases, parce que le candidat.
Non, mais je pense qu'il faut la mettre à la fin, cette phrase-là. Parce que vous dites, enfin, le paragraphe décrit les aspects techniques, et après, à la fin, peut-être c'est d'autres aspects à la fin. En plus de. Parce que là, vous coupez la phrase avant, on parle de l'état de l'art, etc. Et à la fin, on revient sur la technique. Je pense qu'il faut la laisser à la fin de ce paragraphe, pas au milieu. Non, à la fin, après la fouille de données et la rétro-ingénierie. Parce que là, on est de la technique, on parle de quelque chose de précis. Ouais. Et après, on parle de l'aspect plutôt. Après, qu'est-ce que. Je ne sais pas, c'est écrit. Il vient aussi à souligner l'autonomie de l'activité développeur ainsi que l'origine de l'application des techniques.
Alors, l'autonomie, ça veut dire qu'il va travailler tout seul.
Non, il n'a pas travaillé tout seul.
Autonomie, non, parce que n'importe quel directeur de recherche va dire quelle chance ils ont eu de la paix. Entre guillemets. Moi, j'aurais tendance à dire comme ça. Je suis désolé d'être un peu plus déformé, mais.
façon, il celui qui va dire
Voilà.
non, non, non,
L'autonomie, c'est positif. C'est
D'accord,
valeur
très bien.
positive. T'en fais pas que ça va pas être super. On va dire, après, une dame qui c'est pas cher. C'est un peu ça. Disons que là, c'est bon par rapport à la marque de challenge, c'est plus par la localisation, ça. C'est dans le sens que c'est pour le coup, ça apparaît clairement. C'est écrit au
Juste, c'est pas par rapport au rapport, mais tout à l'heure, tu as parlé de. Je sais qu'on a deux thèses là. Une qui la thèse qui est juste de la libération, qui travaille sur l'aspect migration. Il a répondu, qui explique comment transformer le code. Là, lui, que le reproduit. Ouais, il doit y être des
Mais par contre, il a bien
ah oui, mais il a répondu.
il s'est borné son sujet. C'est très bien ce qu'il a fait. Il sait ce qu'il doit. Et après, la question sur cet aspect de migration, c'est qu'il en ait tellement conscience. Et de toute façon, il ne peut pas tout faire. Donc, il n'y a aucun problème. Mais c'est bien. Ça veut dire qu'il sait très bien où il est. Et donc, il a été toujours dans le guichet pour faire ce qu'il y a avant. Il a donné ce qu'il y a après, etc. Et lui, c'est de savoir se situer là-dedans, qu'est-ce qu'il a fait et pas fait. Par définition, c'est toujours hyper important. De dire, tu ne vas pas dans la tête, j'ai pas fait ça, j'ai pas fait ça, j'ai pas tout ça. Et de toute façon, tu sais qu'à un moment donné, moi, ça, on ne l'a pas fait. Et s'il a tout fait, il se plante. Ça, c'est vraiment des choses qui sont importantes. Donc, il sait très bien où il est capable de répondre. C'est ça.
Je laisserai le. J'avais des coquilles.
Il a déjà pris pas mal, donc il a.
Ouais, les commentaires principaux, il les a pris.
Ouais.
Les coquilles.
D'accord.
Donc, je laisse j'échange mon document de travail entre le document final.
Par contre, c'est marqué
oui, c'est vrai. Comment?
Je crois que c'est le président qui est en visio.
Ça peut vous l'avez pas.
Je peux envoyer un courriel pour dire que. Je ne sais pas si c'est nécessaire d'envoyer un courriel pour dire que je l'approuve.
On va voir, oui, mais après, on regarde. Mais de toute façon, je pense que Flavio va noter quelque chose.
Résultat, qu'est-ce qu'il faut que tu nous fais signer un truc, mais il n'y a pas de résultat.
Oui.
Tu nous fais signer un chèque en blanc, là. Est-ce que c'est admin? C'est quoi? Qu'est-ce qu'il faut écrire dans le résultat? Admin? Tu dois avoir ça dans le bas des mécoms. Vous n'avez plus de mention de toute façon.
Admin, c'est ça?
Vous n'avez plus de mention.
Ah non, pas de mention.
Ah, nous, il continue.
Également,
Chez nous, il continue.
Ah bon?
Non, pas
Ah,
celle-là.
mais c'est pas officiel.
Honorable ou pas, ou très honorable?
Ça, honorable.
Non, il n'y a que deux. Très honorable ou honorable? Honorable, c'est une
pas ça.
Honorable, c'est une sanction.
C'est quelque chose qui est pas sur le diplôme. Moi, je pense.
On a pour la merde, non?
Oui, je sais.
Mais nous, on est une fac de sciences humaines et sociales.
Donc, est-ce que vous êtes d'accord, admis?
Oui.
Oui.
Et après, il y a l'histoire de reproduction en l'état. Ça, il n'y a que toi.
Ça, c'est quoi?
Ça, c'est le rapport. C'est un
Il imprimera sur. Tu l'as pas en double? Cette feuille, non?
Ce que je propose, c'est d'envoyer à Jamel.
Celle-ci?
C'est une impression à 3. Tu mets la feuille en envers.
C'est une bonne.
Je n'ai pas compris. Donc il faut.
Tu vas imprimer le texte.
D'accord, pas de problème. Pour faire quoi? Ah non, photocopie, etc.
Il aurait fallu en faire deux et signer deux feuilles blanches à droite. On imprime le texte. Tu autorises un texte tapé? Dans certaines universités, il faut un texte manuel.
D'accord.
Ça, il faut français. S'il faut un texte manuscrit, il n'y a que lui qui peut l'écrire. Il l'écrit maintenant avant de partir.
Moi, je sais pas l'écrire.
D'accord.
Certaines
Le président, on peut l'envoyer par mail.
mais là, si s'il a le temps, il l'écrit.
Qu'est-ce qu'on fait?
On est d'accord.
Tu l'écris après ou...
Personnellement, je pense que c'est l'idéal de les
C'est autorisé.
Ah oui, on peut. Mais je vais demander tout de suite là. C'est imprimer, c'est récent. Enfin, parce qu'il faut caler. Il faut...
Voilà, c'est pour ça qu'en général on fait deux.
Il y a tout le monde d'arrêter de payer.
On fait deux parce que si tu foires le premier, si tu imprimes la page à l'envers.
Je vais pour qu'on teste sur l'ordre.
Avec un billet CCF.
Alors, on doit noter là.
C'est bon, il n'y a que ça à faire, il n'y a que.
Non, mais attends, mais on va le faire venir.
Nicolas.
Pour la diffusion, on peut déjà faire la diffusion. Pour la diffusion, est-ce que la thèse peut être produite en état?
Pour moi, oui.
Et rapporteur.
Oui, c'est bon, mais jamais ça sert à rien.
Moi, en fait, parce qu'il faut après tester si ça marche, parce qu'on ne peut pas mettre ça directement dans l'imprimante.
C'est ça.
Non,
tu fais un coup à blanc, tu regardes si ça rentre. Si tu fais un coup à blanc, tu regardes si c'est bien. La transparence, tu regardes si ça tombe bien.
Mais c'est-à-dire que c'est par rapport à ça.
Tu fais en sorte que tu fais des blancs avant.
Tu prends le truc, tu imprimes un blanc, tu fais sûr de ton coup, tu l'avais, tu ne prends pas. D'accord.
Oui, tu fais des
Tu ne pourras pas le faire maintenant, c'est pas grave.
C'est ça.
Par contre, il faut marquer ici.
S'il a le temps de l'imprimer une bière avant qu'on parte, on peut signer une deuxième bière.
Maintenant, on va pour la reproduction.
Oui. Oui. Parce que sinon, on est
Puis, est-ce que vous êtes d'accord que la thèse soit disponible sur Internet et tout?
c'est les entreprises.
Justement, ça, j'ai une autre thèse. L'entreprise, ils sont franchement chiants par rapport à tout ce qui est confidentiel. Même, ils m'ont demandé si on peut faire une thèse sans public. Est-ce que c'est possible ça? On peut faire ça?
Il faut qu'ils soient motivés, qu'on soit confidentiel. Pas sans public, sur un jury, oui, d'accord.
Ah non, le jury, oui. Et ils veulent faire signer au rapporteur un papier de voilà, qui n'est pas confidentiel. Non, mais
Je ne suis pas persuadé que si les rapports, le problème qu'il y a, c'est qu'ils ont été avec un financement et tout. Ils ne peuvent pas y avoir des exigences. À mon avis, la thèse est publique. Il va y avoir personne qui est venu dans la salle, pour mon avis, c'est pas possible. Moi, je pense que c'est pas possible.
Après, ils peuvent filtrer les.
non, mais ça, on l'a dit déjà. On a eu un papier, j'ai eu un mal fou pour préparer la présentation. C'est-à-dire ça, on le veut, ça, non, c'est trop confidentiel, on ne veut pas que tout le monde. Ah, ça
me fait penser à la réunion.
Il faut qu'ils y pensent avant de demander des sous de l'État pour le faire.
Dans les projets, les gens qui disent non, il n'est pas sûr de passer. Moi, j'ai dit que j'ai ça à regarder. On dit à financer. Vous n'êtes pas content, c'est pareil.
Si vous voulez financer un truc privé, vous ne demandez pas de l'argent. Ils ne demandaient pas de l'argent de l'État. Ils s'embauchaient un thésard pour 3 ans et puis basta. Le CEA,
la thèse
paye ses thèses, la thèse confidentielle, ils les payent, mais la thèse est publique. Mais ils avaient filtré le document de thèse qui était passé par des organismes de validation. D'ailleurs, c'est un problème parce que je ne peux pas l'envoyer au rapporteur. Le document de thèse, au CEA, il fallait une valeur très rarement pour que le CEA dise OK, ça peut être envoyé au rapporteur. Mais après, une fois qu'ils l'ont validé, ça y est, c'est public entre guillemets. Ils ont vérifié qu'il n'y avait rien de confidentiel pour reprendre le cas.
Manuscrit, la seule chose que tu peux faire, c'est empêcher la diffusion. C'est-à-dire que
mis sur le bibliothèque.
Le jeu sur la mémoire, mais ça, par contre, ça ne sort pas. L'université a un exemplaire, mais par contre, il n'y a aucune diffusion. Ça, c'est normal.
Donc, on fait quoi?
C'est pour les rapports?
Oui,
c'est bon.
Non, c'est très bien.
Donc, il y a rajouté pour les grades de docteur informatique de démontrer le module.
Parfait.
Et je vais donc envoyer. Je vais t'envoyer.
Oui, je l'imprime, c'est ça?
Non, mais après.
Non, mais c'est tu.
On a déjà
Il fait ça.
Ça peut se faire en poste, tu n'as pas obligé de le faire en ligne.
Tu peux faire ça.
Je vais réécrire le texte.
Et ça, c'est confiance. Ça fait on n'a pas besoin de. On n'a pas besoin de. Ok. Donc,
C'est bon?
Il va
Je
s'inquiéter.
l'appelle? Donc tu vas lire directement dans ton ordinateur, c'est ça? Ok. Je peux te l'imprimer si tu veux. Pour toi, pour que tu puisses.
je peux voir directement.
Comment?
Je peux la garder directement.
D'accord. C'est bon, tu l'as fait? Oui. Ah, pour lui, peut-être il va passer certainement par un traducteur.
Oui.
Ouais. Mais attends juste, est-ce qu'on ne peut pas récupérer Howell là? Problème de connexion.
C'est la machine.
Hein? Ouais, mais voilà, il y a un problème. Check if you have the internet. It's okay? You are connected?
I think, yeah.
Because
I have
it's
the
ready.
connection.
It's ready.
We have connection. The problem with I think it's in his part.
Ouais, comme ça, il va rester là.
Donc, les jurys a délibéré, les rapports.
Si tu peux, quelques phrases en anglais.
Non, je vais d'abord les lire en français et puis ensuite les petit résumé en anglais. Okay? So first of all, I will read the meeting in French and then I will make a brief summary in English. Donc, M. Anass Shatnawi a présenté avec assurance et pédagogie son travail de thèse sur les supports à la réutilisation par rétro-ingénierie des architectures composantes à partir du code source orienté objet. Son exposé très vivant a clairement ressorti la démarche rigoureuse de conduction des travaux et notamment la validation expérimentale des résultats. Dans ces cadres, le jury a particulièrement apprécié la qualité de l'analyse de l'état de l'art, très approfondie et pertinente, et également que les contributions de la thèse ont été construites en capitalisant sur des résultats précédents à l'état de l'art, au-delà de son équipe. Il tient aussi à souligner l'autonomie et la créativité de nos candidats, ainsi que l'originalité de l'application des techniques de fuite des données à la rétro-ingénierie. Lors de ses réponses aux questions nombreuses et variées, M. Anass Shatnawi a montré sa maîtrise de ces sujets difficiles qui nécessitent à la fois de vastes compétences tant au niveau théorique que pratique. La programmation de GER, l'algorithmique, la fuite des données, la conception par composants, les lignes de produits logiciels et les architectures de référence. Pour toutes ces raisons, les jurys unanimes décernent à M. Anass Shatnawi le grade de docteur en informatique de l'Université de Montpellier. What I said is basically that the jury appreciated very much your presentation. Yeah? That it was a very live presentation in the sense that it was very didactic and also very dynamic with respect to the ERC.
use of the support during the presentation. But the jury appreciated several points of the work that I've done. First of all, the analysis of the state of the art and the fact that it is very detailed, and in particular that it is very argumented on the one hand. On the other hand, the jury also appreciate the fact that we did the results of your thesis based on the state of the art, like on the contribution for other works, not only from your team, but also elsewhere to some extent. And in this context, the jury highlight the fact that you carried out the work with autonomy and also creativity. And in particular, they liked the originality of the application of determining techniques for the resident. Then, in the reports, we stated that you very well refined the questions that were numerous, and also that you showed during your response to the questions that you mastered the subject, and a subject that requires skills on the practical side and also on the theoretical side. And let's say among them, you can see object programming, algorithms, data mining, design, components, based software engineering, software product lines, and representative. So for all those reasons, the jury unanimously delivered you the award of Doctor in Computer Science or Informatics of the University of
I appreciate your comments with guidelines for future directions. I thank my supervisor, the man he was not only a supervisor, he was a friend, brother, and he assisted me in every life activity during my education in Montpellier, starting from the first day till the end of my journey here in France. I would like also I would like also to thank Dr. Anass Shatnawi for his valuable guidance throughout the work under this thesis. I would like to thank my family, my brothers, my sisters, my mother. I would like also to dedicate of my work to the soul of my brother, who always encouraged me to do the best and not to stop such a point. I would like also to thank my mother for her continuous praying to achieve my goals. I will not forget my friends, my family here in France. Thank you all. I would like to thank my team and in general Learn Laboratory for his their support doing this year. And thank you. I would like also to invite you for the photo test in the cafeteria of the Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
And who are it? Thank you for again for your efforts and you will miss the fall.
In fact, I had the power cut, so I'm connected with my phone now.
Ah,
Yeah.
ok. Ok. Ah, ça arrive aussi au Canada? Ah. D'accord, ok. Ok. Merci Houari. Donc on va descendre à la cafétéria pour le pot. Donc voilà, merci et voilà, à très bientôt. Et voilà. Ah, et Anas, Houari, welcome with you.
Yeah. Hello.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much. Thanks for your
Nice work and to serve the result.
Thank you. Yeah.
Okay. So we will talk later. We will continue the work. So we will talk later.
Inshallah, we will do that. Of course, we will keep in touch. Okay. Okay. Bye bye.
I forget this, Anas. It's for you, from the lyric.
Thank you.